All right, today we're going to talk about solving quadratics with the quadratic formula. So we need to solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Let's go ahead and solve this. So first thing we need to talk about, well, what in the world is the quadratic formula? Basically what you're going to need to use for the quadratic formula is our standard form. Remember, standard form of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The quadratic formula looks a little something like this. The opposite of b plus or minus the square root of 2 or b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that looks a little confusing, but really if you label all the pieces and you plug it in, you'll be fine. So let's keep this on there so you guys can see where we're getting all the information from, and let's go ahead and plug in our stuff. So first thing we need to do is find our a. Remember, a is the number that's in front of the x squared. That's going to be this number. What number's not there, or what number is there if I don't write it? It's a 1. Our b is the number in front of the x, and that's not just going to be a 4, it's going to be a negative 4 because it's a negative or minus 4x. And our last number is the c, it's our constant, is going to be 3. Now all we have to do is plug it into our equation. X equals negative b plus or minus a square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So let's plug it in. Opposite of b, so let's put x equals first. So x equals the opposite of b, which is negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Now there's a reason I put parentheses around everything, and that's if I'm going to plug this into my calculator, I need to make sure I have parentheses in the right places, because your calculator is only as smart as the person operating it. So let's simplify, just not even using calculator, just by hand. Let's do this. You should be able to and must be able to do this by hand. The opposite of negative 4 is, well, it's 4, plus or minus a square root. Negative 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times 1 times 3 is 12. All over 2 times 1, well, that's 2. Let's simplify some more, because we can. So x equals, well, 4 is going to stay the same, plus or minus 16 minus 12 is 4, all over 2. One more time, x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2 divided by 2. Now I'm going to bring this up because I can split this up to two different equations. The first equation I can split it up to is 4 plus 2 divided by 2, and the second piece is 4 minus 2 divided by 2. Well, 4 plus 2 is 6 divided by 2, got ahead of myself there, is 3. That's one of our solutions. 4 minus 2 is 2 divided by 2 is 1. So really when we're going to write our solution out, we need to write x equals 1 or 3. And there's our solution. Not too scary, right? Just plug it in and go step by step, simplifying where you can, and you'll get your solutions. Let's do a couple more here, some that may be a little bit trickier than the other ones. So first thing, let's label our a, our b, and our c. Our a for this one is going to be 2, our b is 8, and our c is 14. Let's plug in each piece we have. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all divided by 2a. Now notice you could pull out a greatest common factor there, but I'm not going to. You don't need to in order to use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to go and I'm going to solve this without even pulling out a greatest common factor, which remember, if we were factoring, you'd have to pull that out first. So let's simplify this. Equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 112 divided by 4. So now what you're going to notice is, oh goodness, we're going to have a negative number. We all know what that means. So negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 48 divided by 4. Well, first thing we know, we got a negative, so we have imaginary numbers. So that's going to make imaginary numbers. Now let's see if we can simplify this. 2 and 24, 2 and 12, 2 and 6, and 2 and 3. So I can simplify this. I can pull out a 4. So really, what this is going to become is x equals -8 plus or minus 4i times the square root of 3, all divided by 4. Now let's look at each piece. Can I pull out anything from, sorry, meant to circle that in red, from these three numbers? Well, yeah, I can pull out a 4 from each piece. So really, x becomes, it equals -2 plus or minus I square roots of 3. And since I'm dividing by 1, I can leave it like that. And since I can't simplify I square roots of 3 any further, I'm just going to leave it in that way, that form. All right. I'll do one more for you guys, and then I'm going to give you some examples and get the solutions from you. All right. So again, label your X, your A, your B, your C. Well, this one's a little bit trickier because we don't have it set equal to something that we need to always have it done to do the quadratic formula. What do we always have to have it equal to? 0. So our first step is to set this equal to 0, which is easy, just 2x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. Now from there, let's put in our pieces. Our A is 2, our B is -5, and our C is -6. So x equals -5 plus or minus a square root of -5 squared minus 4 times 2 times -6 all over 2 times 2. So it becomes x equals 5 plus or minus a square root of 25. Now this is going to become a plus because you're doing a negative times a negative. So it's going to become plus 48 divided by 4. Which means we end up with x plus or minus, x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 73 divided by 4. Now 73 is a prime number, so I can't take the square root, or I can't simplify that square root at all, which means that's the most simplified version I can get to. All right, I want you guys to try these last two here, and I'll put up the answers in a second. All right, here are the solutions I got. Notice in that number 5 example there, you got only one solution. That's because underneath the square root, you got equals to 0. So you got only one real solution for that quadratic. Now the number 4, you got two real solutions. Make sure you check your answers. And if you can do 0 divided by 6, so maybe some people got tripped up there. Don't forget that. All right. Why don't you try these two on your own, and I'll put up the answers in a second. All right, here's what I got. I showed my steps. Check your guys' answers. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, these are going to be the last two examples I have for this video, so why don't you try those on your own, and I'll put up the answers in a second. All right, here are my solutions. If you guys didn't notice, number 9 is the same thing as the previous example that we did. Just keeping you guys on your toes. If you guys didn't do it, that's okay. Let me know if you guys have any questions. This is going to be all I'm going to do for the quadratic formula, so make sure you guys know how to do it. You will need to know how to do it by hand. Cannot plug it into your calculator and figure out the answers, because we need to keep it in simplest radical form, as well as you need to find imaginary numbers sometimes too.